Good afternoon and welcome back for our hearing with the Pennsylvania State Police. Before we begin, while we did have a moment of silence earlier this week, I do want to convey on behalf of myself and this committee to Lieutenant Colonel, to all of the members of the Pennsylvania State Police, our deepest condolences on the passing of our trooper, and want you to know that we've been praying for you, with you, and if you could please share that with the trooper's family as well. Oh, absolutely. Before we begin, Chairman Struzzi, any introductory comments?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Harris. And as the chairman said, we all feel deep a sense of loss for what happened. And I think it really speaks to the fact that when you guys put the uniform on, you're always, running the risk of not coming home at night. And we totally respect that and appreciate that. And we're here to help you do your jobs to make sure that you come home safely every night and all of your troopers. So I echo the chairman's sentiments and move forward with the hearing then. So as an overview, the governor is proposing a total spend for the Pennsylvania State Police in the upcoming fiscal year of $1.33 billion, roughly a $117 million increase or 9.4% over the fiscal year. And then also just to point out that the PSC has also proposed to receive $250 million from the Motor License Fund in addition to the general fund. And with that, we'll look forward to your testimony today. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. In the middle of the table is our timekeeper. When the light turns green, our members will commence with their questions. They will have 5 minutes to ask questions. When there's 30 seconds left, the green light will turn yellow. And then when time has expired, the green light will turn red. We would ask that when the green light turns red, that you would conclude your comments so that we can get as many members in as possible. Before we begin, if we could have everyone stand so that we could swear you all in. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Lieutenant Colonel, it is my understanding that the written testimony has been submitted. Would you like to begin with an opening statement, or would you like to commence with questions?
If I could, I would just introduce my team, and then we'll be happy to take questions.
Please do.
So I have Lieutenant Colonel Chris King, Deputy of Administration and Professional Responsibility, to my far right. I have Major Matthew Nickey, Deputy of Operations, to my immediate right. To my immediate left, Lieutenant Colonel Joanne Reed, Deputy of Staff, and to my far left, Special Assistant Brooke Mead.
We thank you, and we will begin with Representative Sanchez.
Our command staff, there we go. Colonel, as I'm sure you're well aware, on April 13th, 2025, the governor's official residence was firebombed. Thankfully, the Shapiro family was unharmed, but the residence did sustain serious damage. So this attack didn't happen in a vacuum. Have threats of political violence increased in recent years?
They have, sir. Those threats have increased against the governor, against other elected officials, and against law enforcement across the Commonwealth and across the country.
And following the attack, was the residence in Harrisburg suitable for the governor and his family to continue to reside in?
No.
So a temporary solution was necessary?
It was, sir. There was extensive damage, not only to the area of the state dining room, but smoke had infiltrated much of the rest of the residence, rendering the entire structure uninhabitable.
And it's your responsibility as the Pennsylvania State Police to keep the governor safe and his family, regardless of the location. That's correct?
It is.
And as a result of the aforementioned incident, PSP was tasked with securing the governor's personal residence. Is that correct?
We were.
And could you share how much securing his residence cost and where that money came from?
Well, are we talking before the attack or after the attack, sir?
That's post-attack.
So post-attack, there were a number of upgrades that we needed to make. There had been some security measures in place there and provisions for members of the executive services detail to be present and to provide a level of protection to him and his family. Post-attack, we made a determination that we needed to significantly upgrade the residence. We needed to significantly upgrade the perimeter of the residence and put technology there at least somewhat comparable to what we were putting in at the official residence. And so we proceeded with that, and the total cost was in the area of about $1.1 million.
That was 1.1?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And do you anticipate needing to spend additional funds in the future?
I would expect there will be relatively small amounts of money for upkeep, but there should be no large expenditure at the personal residence as we've had now.
And without those security upgrades, would you have considered the governor's personal residence a secure location, safe for him and his family?
No, sir, and we really had two choices. Once we needed another place for he and his family to reside full-time, we could either install the upgrades and let technology do some of the work for us, or I could put a very large number of troopers physically present at that residence and on the property 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, at a much higher cost and a much larger drain on personnel across the agency.
And when you implemented these items, you used a job order contracting procurement, also known as procurement process, to purchase the enhanced security measures for both residences. To the best of your knowledge, did PSP operate within the confines of the law when going through that process?
Yes, sir.
And can you share, did you then or do you now have any reason to believe that wasn't an appropriate method to use?
I have no reason to believe that, and I still believe it was the appropriate path to take.
And do you make a habit of questioning DGS or OGC?
I go to them for expert advice. DGS, in the case of the procurement process, as they are the owners of the regulations and the experts in Commonwealth government, and OGC, as I routinely do for any number of legal matters. And no, I don't make a habit of questioning or second-guessing answers when I get a very clear answer from them.
Thank you. And one last question on, you mentioned the fencing, Colonel, that was purchased by PSP. It's my understanding that it was ultimately not used at the residence. And can you tell me why?
Because there was an issue with obtaining a variance and a zoning permit that was going to result in a significant delay. We had another option to use landscaping instead. We were really trying to create a visual barrier, and we were able to do that without having to have extensive delays because of permitting issues, and so we moved forward with
and I just have one follow-up on that, if the chairman is okay. Is the fence now in use at the barracks? Is that?
The fence is now in use at the Pennsylvania State Police Academy. As you may know, we have a very large construction project there. We have outdoor training villages, and we simulate neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods include fencing, and so we've incorporated it into the design there.
Great. Thank you so much, Colonel. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We thank the gentleman. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel. I just want to, start out with a positive, both my personal support for the state police, the funding, and a specific shout out for the Camp Cadet program. It's a great program. Our kid number 7 got to go through that, and learning the oath and, having that experience it really helped to shape him. And so I thank you for the continuance of that program. I'd like to begin in the budget, specifically another area of proposed significant increase is in the transportation line item for new vehicles. It was a 20% increase last year. This year, another 20% increase, so 2.6 more million. So a total of about $15 million going to the vehicle line item. Can you explain the need for this significant increase, the decision-making process, the procurement process? You know, what is driving this
Certainly.
large year-over-year increase?
So I would tell you that for more than a decade, we had been locked into a budget of about $13 million per year for patrol vehicles. With the Shapiro administration's budget office, in the first 2 years of the administration, the budgets were actually increased significantly, $20 million and over. They were very helpful to us because we had a huge percentage of our fleet that was approaching 200,000 miles or more, posed safety issues, reliability issues, and so there was a large infusion of money to try and bring that mileage down, and it was very successful. Last budget year, we went back to our normal $13 million, and we were able to maintain, but there's a little bit of slippage there in terms of trying to keep those mileages down. The price of patrol cars continues to increase dramatically. We pay about $98,500 right now on average for a fully equipped patrol car until we put all of the technology and everything in it. And so we were really starting to slip again. The budget office worked with us to try and come up with an amount that would negate going backward, and that's how we arrived at the $15.6 million.
That's great. That's great. Last year, I had asked about the possibility, the opportunity for Pennsylvania to begin to upgrade our vehicles to include ballistic protection. You know, the state of Texas has implemented this. I think there are 8 to 10 states that are also considering. Philadelphia is now rolling out some ballistic protection on their police cars. Even in Westmoreland County, you know, we're going to be celebrating this coming year our first ballistically protected vehicle. In these upgrades, in your budget documents, I didn't see any mention of ballistic protection. Is that something that we are considering for our officers?
That may be something for the future. I will tell you that we have experimented with it a little. We're looking at some options out there, and that may be in a future budget request. There is a significant amount of work that goes into upgrading a vehicle and it depends what level of security you're trying to increase. So it can be a windshield, it can be side windows, it can be panels in the doors, and so forth. And then you have to get into the level of protection of each of those panels. We've done some experimenting with some specialty fleet vehicles. We may try and move in that direction for patrol vehicles. One of the challenges with us is with a fleet as large as we have, trying to implement that would be a significant cost to the Commonwealth and would almost certainly, without additional funding, result in fewer vehicles and put us back in the situation of having very high mileage cars and slipping there. So probably a discussion that we can look forward to having as we settle on what that might look like.
Yeah, that would be great. I think from some numbers that we've seen, you know, it might be about $4,000 for ballistic doors, or upgrading, you know, could be in that $12,000 to $15,000, you know, for a full ballistic upgrade, you know, trying to incorporate those costs, you know, on top of the $98,000. You know, I understand those, you know, those monies can increase, but it's something that, you know, we look forward to working with you moving forward and helping to support.
Absolutely. And I mean, to give you some idea, we have almost 1,600 patrol vehicles just in the patrol fleet. So when you start multiplying that out, you see where the numbers get pretty large, plus the delays in trying to process those vehicles and get everything installed. But it's definitely something we'd like to look at.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So every year I ask you guys the same question, which is talking about diversity in your ranks and the really kind of abysmal rate of actually trying to get diversity up. Last year, you guys actually sent me a little bit more detail, which I think actually makes the case a little bit worse than what we thought. 4,200 minorities applied. 3,610 were eligible to test. 1,777 completed the test and ranked on the eligibility list. 81 were appointed to a cadet class and 36 graduated. So that's a 0.85% graduation rate from application and a 2% graduation from ranked applicants. So while I completely understand and support the ability of the state police to be discerning in who it is that you, admit into the academy. There is clear interest from these underrepresented groups. And I want to focus on the 45 people who were admitted to a cadet class but didn't graduate. Do you do exit interviews with those folks to determine why they are not completing the program? And do you adapt anything if it is because of sort of external factors that impact their ability to complete the program?
We do inquire of each cadet who is stopping the program. In some cases, they're stopping because of an injury, and if that's the case, we invite them back once they're healed. If it's that they've made a conscious decision to leave, we want to know why, if they'll share that with us. Those are all documented. Those are circulated through the front office. Lieutenant Colonel King takes a look and reviews each of those, and we certainly try to make sure that there is not some systemic issue that is leading to those resignations. That has not been the case with anything that we have found to this point. In terms of our minority hiring, I'm going to turn to Special Assistant Meade here in just a second. I actually think our numbers have been improving. I think the numbers of the recruiting efforts that we've had out there are showing real promise. We have a lot of applicants, and I'll tell you, it's in a challenging environment. You know, we were just talking about the fact that we just lost a corporal in the state police. It's very difficult to go out and sell that profession when periodically in the news, whether it's someone from the state police or a local police agency or somewhere in an adjacent state, those kinds of things happen with far too great frequency. So there are a lot of challenges trying to recruit qualified candidates to come in. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that the hiring process is free of any bias, that everyone is given an opportunity and encouraged to apply and to successfully complete the Pennsylvania State Police Academy. So if you'd like some current numbers, I'd be happy to have Special Assistant Meade share those.
I would be happy to have you send it to me afterwards because I have other questions. Okay. But I think that it's clear that there is interest from these groups, and I think that there does need to be a little bit more work in retention once they're in the candidate class. The Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association recently put out a list of their 2026 key legislative priorities, and among them, in an effort to address threats to our communities, they are advocating that we create a cannabis regulation board to regulate the sale and distribution of products containing THC in the Commonwealth. Do you agree with that position?
I've seen that recommendation. We are not taking an official position on it. What I would say is that we are certainly here to enforce the law, and we will do that, whatever it is that you all decide the law should be.
Thank you. Also, acknowledging that Megan's Law registrants are more likely to abscond when there are significant hurdles to their compliance with registry restrictions, this legislature passed Act 10 of 2018 requiring the state police to implement a telephonic verification system for Megan's Law registrants. 8 years later, that system remains dysfunctional. Can you speak to why that is and how we can make it functional so that we can ensure the safety of our communities?
I'm sorry, we'll have to get back to you on the specifics of that telephonic system. What I can tell you is, looking at our compliance rates, we're actually far better than the national average. We're at, I think, around 3.4% non-compliance. The national average is exceeding 10, almost 11%. So I think the things that we are doing are working. Again, I'll have to get back to you on that specific program.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Colonels, Major. Thank you for being here. I also want to thank you all for what you do. It goes without saying. Appreciate you standing between the bad guys that want to do people harm and those that are innocent, so appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question. This is about terrorism on the home front. We saw that terror attack that happened this weekend in New York. I believe that was came out of a terror cell out of Bucks County. It was ISIS linked. About an hour ago, we found out that the FBI gave California a heads up that they might be under a drone strike from Iran. And this is all happening. I know you guys have the Special Emergency Response Team, the CERT team, and then you also believe you have the Homeland Security Office as well?
We do.
Okay. And I'm not asking you guys to talk about anything, break TTPs or jeopardize ongoing investigations, but I do have a couple questions about what you guys may be doing for anti-terrorism in the Commonwealth. My first question is, given that past terror attack that just happened in New York and that came out of Bucks, which is really close to where I represent Northampton and Lehigh counties, would the PSP be willing to give legislators updates, private updates to keep us informed as to what's going on to help us better help you?
I think we would be willing to look at how we could do that, and it would have to be on a specific case-by-case basis. We do routinely share information with the Capitol Police, with Sergeant at Arms if there is anything that may be a threat to the members of the legislature. I realize that's a little different than the communities that you're talking about. We are very dialed in with the FBI. We work closely with them. In fact, even on this Bucks County case, we were working along with the FBI on the Bucks County piece of that through the Joint Terrorism Task Force and then also through other tactical assets that we have that we make available for those jobs. The challenge is how much of that information can be released, and particularly in a case like that, it's not our investigation. We don't have the lead. While we're certainly contributing to it, we would have to go back and discuss with the FBI what we can and can't release, and that's why I say we'd really have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
No, and that makes total sense, sir, and I appreciate that. My next question was, what federal authorities are you working with to combat terrorism? You touched on the FBI, and I appreciate that. And my last question is, and I'm not trying to play politics or whatever, we all know that we had 15 to 20 million randoms come into our country over the last few years. We had 2.1 million known gotaways that paid a little extra so that they didn't bump into Border Patrol. Is your department working on any potential insider threats and how to tackle that in the case of a larger event goes down?
So while we are not working specifically on the immigration issue itself, we have a very robust criminal intelligence program, both field intelligence and then the Pennsylvania Criminal Intelligence Center, State Fusion Center. Our people do an amazing job collecting information on threats, potential threats, entities that may be planning certain things. And that goes back to that joint work that we do with the FBI and Homeland Security investigations as well. We have done a very good job collecting within the confines of the law on domestic threat groups and again, work closely with the FBI as international threats that have a touch on the Commonwealth are identified. We continue to work closely with them on that and, and then work back through the Fusion Center. The FBI and Homeland Security both have analysts assigned to our Fusion Center and can function in the classified environment. And so all of that information is synthesized really into a threat picture for us. And I think I'll give credit to the men and women in our department that do that work. They do an amazing job and really are outstanding eyes and ears for the agency and for the Commonwealth.
No, I really appreciate that answer. Real quick, we're almost out of time, but do you guys interact with the National Guard on that level too, using intel and all?
We do interact with the National Guard. We have briefings as appropriate, and I have fairly regular communications with the Adjutant General, and certainly anything he needs or I need, we can go back and forth at any time.
Great to hear. Thank you so much, Colonel. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Salisbury.
Thank you, Chairman. My question relates to enforcement or lack thereof of civil immigration violations in the Commonwealth on the part of the state police. So I'm aware that we have the administrative regulation, I believe it's 7-14.
It is.
That regulates that internally. And I wonder if you can give a synopsis of how your officers are trained to interact with someone if they should encounter someone who they believe to be illegally in the United States, if they encounter someone who they do know is in the United States illegally, how are they trained under that AR 7-14?
So that Regulation 714 spells out very specifically when they can ask or when they can make contact with ICE. It's a very strict regulation. As I've testified in the Senate, and I would say again here, we are not federal immigration officials. We are not conducting those kinds of investigations or detaining people based on their immigration status. So to your question, there really are very few times where something like that even enters the picture in terms of their investigation, unless a criminal investigation leads us where that is an important part of the investigation and ultimately prosecution. There is no reason for our people to even ask.
So my understanding from reading through that guidance document would be that if they were to, for example, conduct a traffic stop, and in the course of the traffic stop, the person has a valid driver's license, whether it's from another state, another country, they don't inquire based on any characteristics of that individual as to whether they're in the country legally or not. Would that be correct?
That is correct.
And then what would happen if hypothetically one of your troopers decided to take it upon themselves to not comply with that policy? If they were to decide that they felt it was important for them to let ICE know about this?
It would be handled as any other violation of our policies or regulations. There would be an internal investigation initiated, and the potential would be there to discipline that trooper.
And I know, of course, that Pennsylvania's law enforcement budget pales in comparison to the ICE budget, so we really don't have the financial capacity to be undertaking ICE's work for them, in my opinion. But realistically, what are we looking at? What can Pennsylvanians expect? Would we see that this internal regulation would be kept on in future years? I know it was put in place during the Wolf administration by a predecessor. So are you planning to continue this internal guidance and regulation?
We are.
And would there be anything that would have to happen for that to change, in your opinion?
There is nothing that I can foresee in the future that would cause us to change that.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth. Of course, I did mention the budgetary aspect, but why do you feel that it's important to have this policy?
Well, again, as I said, we don't, first of all, I don't think the authority is there for us to be doing the administrative work anyway of ICE. But beyond that, we have to be able to interact with all the residents and people passing through, even with the Commonwealth. And so we need them to feel safe in approaching law enforcement and to be able to maintain that kind of an ability for people to approach our officers without fear that would be one of the first questions that was asked.
I could imagine, for example, a scenario where someone would not want to report domestic violence or not participate in a police investigation of a crime, for example, if they were afraid that the police officer or trooper in your case would turn them into ICE. Would that be something that you're talking about, that they would be afraid, for example?
I think that's certainly a possibility.
Okay. And what do you think is realistically the risk of if a trooper were to participate in activity that is in contravention of this regulation? Do you think that you have troopers who mainly are fine with this policy, or do you feel that you have people who would want to go off on their own and do something different?
You know, I haven't surveyed the members to see what their personal opinions are any more than I do on any other regulation we have in place. The bottom line is we have a regulation. It's a very paramilitary organization. We expect that if there's a regulation in place, it will be followed. If it is not, there are consequences.
And for my last question, if there were some sort of an ICE action, a raid, for example, would state troopers assist in that situation in any capacity?
I think it depends. Again, not from the standpoint of assisting with an administrative immigration raid or seizure. However, if, to use your hypothetical, if we had federal agents being assaulted or some other type of violence occurring, it is our job to also step in and stop the violence.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your responses.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here, and of course, thank you for what you do. It's greatly appreciated, and I think all of us have a story of great thanks that we could share, but we won't do that right now. I would like to say, Lieutenant Colonel, that your testimony highlights the need for to increase Pennsylvania State Police enlisted complement to meet the growing list of mandated activities, duties, enforcement coverage. You also referenced legislative actions and reports about the agency's statutory complement cap, such as Act 34 of 2023, which increased the cap by 100 troopers. Can you explain Pennsylvania State Police legislative complement cap and how this limits the number of enlisted members that you have?
So very briefly, because of the time constraints, there is a legislative cap on the number of enlisted members of the Pennsylvania State Police that we can employ at any particular time. And so we have to stay within that cap, even to be able to run cadet classes. We can't anticipate, under the current system, that we would have a large number of retirements and hire additional cadets anticipating those retirements. We have to wait until they occur and then hire cadets. And so we're constantly behind in trying to fill those spots. In some years, that's been a problem. It was a problem that we were not able to hire enough cadets. We have seen increases in the number of applicants and the amount of diversity of those applicants. This past year has been very helpful to us, and we're making real progress on that. And the danger for us right now is with the number of cadets we have currently in the academy, we are at a point where we can probably not hire any more than about 75 or so cadets for the planned June class, and unless we have more retirements, we couldn't hire any of the planned 380 cadets that are included in this budget until after the first of the year, when we would expect some retirements.
Yeah, it's a difficult and delicate balancing act.
Yeah, so we don't want to lose that momentum with the hiring. We want to be able to keep going and fill those spots.
Are there complement positions not covered by the cap? And if so, how many, and how are those paid? How are they paid?
There are positions. So, for example, troopers assigned to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, troopers assigned to gaming enforcement, to the Delaware River Bridge Authority, and to liquor control enforcement are outside of the complement cap. All other troopers count against that cap.
Let me ask you this. Have you prepared a complement analysis internally to project the number of additional troopers and funding to address the additional mandated activities, duties, and coverage?
We have. In fact, in our written testimony that we submitted, we provided something that showed all of the additional functions that we have taken on over the last number of years. In total, it took about 400 enlisted members from what would have otherwise been used in the patrol function and out there in the counties, patrolling the Commonwealth's highways and communities, and has caused us to use them in other places as priorities have dictated. We would really like to get back to where we have that higher number of patrol troopers, and we think we're in the 300 to 400 range to be able to replace that.
Great. Thank you so much again for all you do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman, Representative Curry.
Thank you, Chairman. Hello, everybody. I thank you for what you do and appreciate your protection of Pennsylvanians. I wanted to ask you a question today about missing and exploited children. Last year when we were in budget hearings, I talked to you all about the alert system that we have to recover missing children. We've been talking a lot about the number of people that will be coming through Pennsylvania this year with the celebration of America's birthday. We know that we've been talking a lot about human trafficking and what that looks like. I'm wondering how this system is really enacted here in Pennsylvania, particularly because when we go onto our social media now, it seems like that's where all the parents or people who are looking for children put these missing children out there to find them. I don't see a lot of Amber Alerts out, and so I'm just wondering what that looks like right now for you all, and if the system is even being used.
It is being used quite extensively. As a matter of fact, the missing endangered person alert is one step, if I can call it, below an Amber Alert. Amber is reserved for someone who is under 18 and has been abducted. The MEPA can be used for anyone who there's any reason to believe they may be endangered. And so the criteria is very relaxed compared to the Amber Alert. We do use that system a lot. In the past year, we activated it 129 times across the Commonwealth. We advertised it out to law enforcement. In the past year, we've also included a training block through the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission so that all municipal officers, if they weren't aware, were made aware of it. We have good participation from many agencies across the Commonwealth. Now, there are some requests that are denied, but those are typically very few and far between. And the only reason really for a denial is someone waits 2 weeks after a person has been missing and has no idea where they might be or suspects that they've run off somewhere, they're a runaway as opposed to missing in another way and maybe out of state or whatever. So as long as there is anything that we can reasonably and timely look for, we will activate the MEPA system. We have agreements with PennDOT that we activate the signboards. You'll see periodically, if you're driving, you'll see, looking for a silver Toyota with a registration. Those are all part of that MEPA alert system, and we
So
put it
the
out on
MEPA
social
alert
media.
system kind of puts all of the systems into one pot.
It does.
Okay, thank you for that. And then the last question I have for you is about the mental health of our Pennsylvanians here. What's Pennsylvania State Troopers doing to ensure that their troopers are properly trained to deal with folks that they come up on who are in crisis? Because we know that a lot of people are in crisis, and then when troopers come up and have to deal with that, how are you all navigating that type of training for your
we do
troopers?
recognize that that's a very serious problem. So this training starts really in the Pennsylvania State Police Academy with our cadets. We have agreements with Penn State Health. We have experts, subject matter experts that come in and that provide training, and even we do a lot of role playing and really try to make sure that our new troopers that will be graduating are well trained. We include training in the mandatory in-service training that we provide to all of our members on an annual basis. And then we also have additional training that we offer. We call them calendar courses, but they're electives that troopers as well as municipal officers can put in for and receive additional training. But that's frequently a key part of it. And the last thing I'll say is that our use of force experts who work out of training and education are constantly looking at the scenarios, the situations that we encounter, and particularly with the mental health aspect, but with other issues as well, and incorporating that into scenario-based training so that we can constantly improve what we're delivering.
So is that like a continuing education credits?
It is.
So you all are staying up to speed, because we know the 988 system is being used constantly now. It's up in the amount of people who are calling it. So we know that these mental health issues are happening throughout the state, and just want to, make sure that you all are getting what you need in terms of training for the mental health issues.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, panel, for being here. Thank you for what you do. The General Government Operations proposed increase a total of $102 million from the general fund as proposed, which includes $85.829 million to continue the current program operations and another $16.231 million initiative for the 4 new cadet classes beginning fiscal year 26-27 to train 380 new trooper cadets. How many cadets do you anticipate graduating overall from these classes, and how does that compare to last year?
So again, we, as you've indicated, we hope to have 380 new cadets enter over the next year. To give you some idea, this past year we appointed 276 so far in the current fiscal year. We don't graduate 276. I think we're on track right now to graduate about 180, either that have already graduated or will graduate, and we anticipate one more class yet this year. So we're hoping to add to that. We're having, again, better success recruiting, and so I'm very hopeful that we can fill those 380 spots and try to retain as many as we possibly can. In response to another question earlier, I mentioned, we do experience injuries. We have others who simply change their minds and decide that this isn't for them. In the end, we will fill as many of those spots as we possibly can.
Is it expected the proposed new cadets will reduce your existing vacancies when accounting for the retirements that you expect within the next fiscal year?
It is.
And how many trooper vacancies do you currently have?
Currently, we have just over 200, but again, we've got 123 in training right now, so those will count against that. And that goes back to my earlier statement about, that we only have about 70 to 80 spots that we can play with then going forward for the June class and then through the fall.
And I'd spoken to you earlier about we talk about statewide public safety radio systems. I know more and more we have PSP covering local municipalities. As a former chief of police, one of the problems I had was communications, either with PSP if they had to come in, or I neighbor Somerset County out of Cambria, and we're not on the same radio frequencies. Is there something being done that we're able to communicate without having to have relays through dispatchers? Is that part of this system, or is there a system in place that is now addressing that?
So we've gotten to the point where the system has matured for state use, and now we're expanding that out. We're doing a couple of things with neighboring states and within the state. With neighboring states, we've now got interoperability with FEMA Region 3, which is kind of everything to the south, and DC. In that area, we've recently introduced interoperability with New Jersey State Police, and we'll have that fully operational within the next few months. And then within the Commonwealth, we have 35 counties that we've brought online already, that we've installed consoles in those 911 centers. There is an ability now for the 911 center, in conjunction with the PSP station, to open that line of communication so that you don't have to talk to a dispatcher who then relays the message. They can open that line of communications as needed so that the officers can talk back and forth directly. We have 20 additional counties that we're working on right now. Ultimately, we'd love to have every county on board. It takes an agreement from that county to do it. There is some cost for them. We bear the majority of the cost, but we'd like to get there. We're making good progress, and I'm hopeful over the next year or so we can finish all the counties.
And as we see more and more rural, smaller police departments shutting down and just closing their doors and turning it over to you, is that becoming a burden on the state police?
I'll tell you, the real challenge for us has been not only departments that are shutting down, but departments that are decreasing their number of hours of service. And so it's much harder to measure that because we don't know, are they now covering 2 or 3 shifts a week, or are they now covering all but 2 or 3 shifts a week? And so when we calculate and we say, well, look, we've got X number of departments that we provide part-time service for, what we are seeing is a huge increase in the number of hours that we are covering those part-time PDs. Their hours are cutting way back. They're not available on the weekends. They're not available on the overnight hours and so forth. That is where we're seeing a huge drain.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. I was curious how was it affecting the state police. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Young.
Good afternoon, Pennsylvania State Police. Before I go into my question, I just want to say thank you for your presence. Thank you for your service. We honor and respect everything that you do for this Commonwealth, and we also offer our condolences.
Thank you, ma'am.
Lieutenant Colonel, during your budget hearing with the Senate, it was disclosed that a restricted revenue account associated with the Pennsylvania Instant Check Systems recently received a $14.3 million deposit, even though the account historically receives only $2 to $4 million annually. My understanding is that this payment resulted from an audit and that the funds has been sitting in the account established in 2014 to process credit cards payments. It seems that this account was never fully configured to return those revenues to the Commonwealth General Fund. Can you explain the current status of this account and the $15 million in revenue, including whether the funds have now been properly reconciled and transferred to the general fund?
So just very briefly, the way that developed was there was a fund created when we could initially start taking credit card payments. It was configured by the state treasurer's office and the comptroller, and we expected those funds would have been moved back into the restricted account for firearms checks. Unfortunately, a step was not taken when that account was created, and so that transfer never occurred. In the early years, those deposits were small. I think the first year was $15,000 over the course of an entire year, and so it wasn't recognized. And little by little, those funds increased as more and more people paid by credit cards to, as you have indicated, there was about a little over $15 million in that account. During a recent audit, we were working with the Legislative Budget and Finance Committee, discovered that we have rectified that. The money has been moved into the restricted account. It can't go into the general fund, but it goes into the restricted account to be used toward expenses with operating PICs. And so that has occurred. What I would tell you is that for the future, there is a new payment process being put in place that will completely eliminate that account and will allow the money to go straight to the treasurer and into the restricted account directly without having to pause in a bank account. It will not, it is not an issue any longer. It's been taken care of. There was no money missing. Everything is accounted for, and it will not be a problem going forward.
Great. So what I think I hear you say is that you have established a particular type of mechanism to ensure that this problem would not occur in the future. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you so much.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Krupa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today and for what you do every day, and thank you to all the men and women in blue who put their lives on the line to protect all the people of the Commonwealth. My questions are regarding the potential legalization of cannabis. So the governor's budget treats recreational marijuana as a potential revenue stream, but I firmly believe that government should never set a goal of profiting from addiction or impairment. When the state builds a system around an intoxicating drug, the potential revenue for some may be inviting, but the costs to society are far greater and far harder to measure. Those real costs show up in drug-impaired driving, mental health crises, addiction treatment needs, and increased burdens on law enforcement. And when those problems arise, it's going to be the state police and local law enforcement who are expected to respond, investigate, and enforce the law. So while the administration may focus on projected tax revenue, my concern today is the real-world impact on public safety and the men and women who will be responsible for enforcing these laws. With that in mind, I have several questions. The governor's proposal includes roughly $2.5 million in initial funding and about $1.25 million annually thereafter for the state police related to adult use cannabis enforcement and expungement activities. Commissioner, were the state police consulted in advance about whether that level of funding is actually sufficient to enforce a newly legalized cannabis industry and address the likeliness of an increase in marijuana impaired driving incidents?
We were consulted, and I would tell you that the $2.5 million was arrived at. You've mentioned the expungements, a significant portion. Again, depending on how the legislation is written, we would expect there would be significant cost to us to address the expungements. But also, one of the concerns that we have raised with the administration is the need to be able to test and detect impaired drivers. And so a significant amount of that money would go toward also expanding the drug recognition expert program that we currently have. Statewide right now, there are about 286, I believe was the last count I saw, DREs between state police and local police across the Commonwealth. We are constantly trying to expand that, and again, we would use some of those funds to further train law enforcement officers, because there is not a reliable test like there is for alcohol. PBT or something like that that could be used along the road.
You actually just answered my next two questions that highlighted the complexity of testing for marijuana with respect to drivers as opposed to alcohol. So the proposal envisions PSP assisting with the enforcement of the legal cannabis industry. Do you anticipate needing additional personnel or specialized enforcement units similar to how the state police work with the Liquor Control Board on alcohol enforcement?
You know, I've seen a number of different models proposed over the last few years, and I apologize for the "it depends" answer, but it really does depend what the legislation expects of the state police. If we were expected to put something in place following the liquor enforcement model, yes, we would need significant additional resources in personnel and funding to be able to do that. If the management of the program falls elsewhere, perhaps not so much. But you know, again, we'd like to be involved in those discussions. If this moves forward, we'd really like to have an ability to be involved so that we can make sure that whatever those needs are, that we can meet them.
So we're already almost midway through March of 2026. If this, I think the projections were to have it legal in the budget address, it was a prediction or a projection of legalizing it in January of 2027. Does that give PSP nearly enough time to set up what they need to set up, what you need to set up to be able to enforce it in either of those two models?
I don't know that I can really answer that without knowing what that legislation would look like and what it would require of us.
Okay. So marijuana remains illegal under federal law as a substance, a Schedule I controlled substance. Have there been discussions with federal authorities regarding how state enforcement will operate in a system where the product remains federally prohibited?
I have not had those discussions, no.
Okay. Have you consulted with law enforcement agencies in other states that have already legalized the recreational marijuana and to gain an understanding of the operational challenges that they're experiencing?
I have.
Okay. And out of that, what do you anticipate would be your biggest challenge?
Well, again, the impaired drivers, I think, is one of the most obvious challenges. I suspect there may be some other issues with criminal activity, but again, much of it really depends how the legislation is structured, what's allowed, what's not allowed.
Thank you. We're both out of time. I'm just really want to express my concern that the Commonwealth is grossly underestimating the real cost of legalizing marijuana. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Fleming.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Colonel, and the rest of the leadership team up there. Again, my deepest condolences on the loss of the state trooper.
Thank you, sir.
Our prayers are with his family. I want to talk to you about an issue that I brought up last year, an issue that I have championed. I am and a bill that just dropped to try to right-size the Pennsylvania State Police budget. And by that I mean, you know, we talked earlier about how this proposal uses about $250 billion from the Motor License Fund to help fund PSP operations, but there are limits to how far that funding goes, aren't there? It can only be used for highway operations and things like that.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, so with that as a backdrop, the Pennsylvania State Police does have responsibility for police coverage for those municipalities that do not have their own police force. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So, so there are ostensibly criminal investigations taking place using Pennsylvania State Police troopers that are not funded by, you know, by either the general fund or the Motor License Fund. You can't access those funds to pay for the troopers who are doing that sort of work, that investigative work, you know, investigating things like robbery, things like assault, a bar fight, things like that, in which a municipal police force is not stood up, right?
I would tell you that we don't separate to that level how that funding is used. So that funding from the Motor License Fund can be used to do things like purchase patrol vehicles. It can be used to pay the salaries of patrol troopers. With that said, it doesn't begin to cover the cost of the patrol function across the Commonwealth. And so as long as we are in a position to be able to document that the number of hours and therefore the expense that would be attributed to, in this case, $250 million is being used for the patrol function, that same trooper could investigate criminal activity because his or her entire salary is not being paid by the motor license fund.
And we realize that, you know, here in the district that I represent, my residents pay about $250 per capita per resident to have the Lower Paxton Township Police, the Pembroke Police Department, and the Susquehanna Township Police Department. So we're paying for our own private police departments here in my district, but our tax dollars also go to fund the Pennsylvania State Police. What my initiative would do is implement a small fee on those municipalities that get Pennsylvania State Police coverage. And the reason for me doing so is to ensure that you have the funds necessary to hire the troopers to actually cover and be able to respond in a timely manner to the places that need police coverage now. You know, and we're not just talking about, you know, certainly there are some small communities, but there are communities of upwards of 30 to 40,000 people who do not have their own municipal police force and are relying on state police coverage that you have to cover as well. And so my aim is to try to infuse more dollars into your operations. If we were able to do that, and there was one estimate that was, I think it was about in 2017 or 2018, there was one estimate that it cost about $600 million of state police hours back then to cover what you would need. If we could get a fee for those folks and say infuse $300 or $400 million, what more could the Pennsylvania State Police do with funding like that?
So I'll tell you, if I can back up just a little bit, I've seen a number of those proposals. And over the years, while I greatly appreciate the support and the good intentions, I have never seen a model yet that I thought really fairly addressed the situation. One of the challenges for us, you know, as we talk about all of the events going on in 2026, you know, we focus on providing what it costs to provide police protection for, say, a small community in a north central, very rural county. But I also look at the amount of resources that we bring into other municipalities, including yours. And we routinely provide police services in those municipalities as well. I never want to do something that causes municipalities to be afraid to use the Pennsylvania State Police because there's going to be some cost associated with that, and therefore they don't have good police services. We provide services to everyone, and from the largest city in Philadelphia, and we will have an amazing number of resources there over the course of the next year in a variety of events, largest to be the World Cup. So, you know, again, I just want to be careful that we don't try to put the cost all on municipalities just because they don't have it.
Well, no, I think there's a way that we can do it. I'm just trying to ensure a system that is fair to all, and I look forward to working with the PSP in order to do that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, gentleman. Representative Mustola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Colonel. As it's been said earlier, thank you so much for what the men and women do to protect us here in the Commonwealth. Very much appreciate it. Just looking towards the budget, I see there was an increase that was asked for $4.3 million for the PIC system. Can you give us an update on how it's improved a little bit? I know we've had, in past years, a lot of times it went down, it didn't work, there were some issues with it. Can you just tell us how you've improved that?
So the PIC system has improved in a number of ways, but in terms of reliability, to give you some idea, in the past year, it was down a total of just over 14 hours, not in one amount, but, and actually through no fault of the system. It was because either other state systems were unavailable that were required checks in order to be able to complete the check, or the NICS system was down, which we have to rely on. And I think in terms of that 14 hours, like 8 or 9 of those hours was the NICS system, and the remainder were state systems. So there really wasn't anything we could do to improve that. We have tried to make improvements in terms of encouraging FFLs to start using the electronic means of query. We see real efficiency in that. We have provided a number of educational opportunities where we've sent people out to educate them on how to move in the direction of that electronic system if they choose to. It's certainly not required. And we work with them to try and ensure compliance so that our desire is to have the voluntary compliance with various rules associated with this and to make the PIC system work as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Is there ever discussion about merging the systems, the NICS system and the PIC system?
Did you say
To
NICS
merge
and
them?
MICS?
Yeah, just to.
No, I mean,
Use them.
NICS is one of the checks that PICS utilizes, but PICS does a lot more than NICS, so it picks up a number of things like additional PFAs that don't qualify to be included in the NICS system, some mental health commitment records that don't qualify for the NICS system, and it also allows us to do some real-time notifications. For example, in the past year, we had 86 people arrested that, believe it or not, showed up, tried to buy a firearm, and had an active arrest warrant for them while they were trying to make that purchase. They were detained, by the FFL surreptitiously until an officer could get there. But it also allows us to make referrals when someone falsifies that form. Under the NICS process, there is no referral like that. They're very few and far between. There are a number of other benefits. I don't want to take all your time.
No, that's fine. Do other states have their own systems?
Some
I'm just
do.
curious. Do they? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Also, funding for the PIC system includes the $4.3 million from the firearm records check. It's the restricted account. What is the current balance of the firearms record check fund?
Well, that goes back to the question that I just mentioned. So when this budget was submitted, that $15 million had not been found. That $15 million is now being transferred into the firearms system and will be available for us to use now and in the future to supplement the money. PICS is underfunded. It's underfunded every year, and so we have had to take money from GGO to fund it in the past.
So then do you not need that $4.3 million increase then?
Again, this was submitted prior. We could use that $15 million, and we'll either use it now or we'll use it next fiscal year.
Okay.
But it is dedicated funding specifically for that.
So that could be taken out then?
It could.
It could be. Okay, great. And I think that is all I had. I just wondered, who monitors the system? Just curious. Are they troopers, or how do you?
The PICS system?
Yes.
So we have trained analysts that monitor that. We have a supervisor that works with them, and we do have enlisted personnel in the center as well. So it's a combination of all of the above, but the people are trained to be able to field questions. So many of these checks are done in an automated fashion. So far more than 60%, there's no interaction with an operator at all. The approval is granted.
Right, so you're saying there's $15 million being withheld for the firearms record, 15 you said, right?
15, yes, ma'am.
Wow, okay. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Vanzo.
Thank you, Chairman Harris, and thank you, Lieutenant Colonel Bevins, here today for being here today. And also, I want to start off by giving a shout out to the Troops A and B back in Western Pennsylvania, Washington, and Greensburg, some of the finest troops here in the Commonwealth. Lieutenant Colonel, your testimony references the college credit requirement for PSP trooper applications in 2023 was removed. What other hiring or advancement changes are you considering making?
I'll tell you, that was one of the big ones that has really helped us. We're changing some things with recruiting to not just go to a job fair, for example, and set up a table. We're really starting and trying to start building interest at the high school level. We've got a number of programs. Camp Cadet was mentioned earlier, that is active in every county around the Commonwealth. And then from Camp Cadet, we have other programs like Hill Impact and Law and Leadership that really follows the age groups up through to the point where they're eligible to apply and become a police officer. We've had a fair amount of success, both applicants joining the state police and local police departments. But it's really for us about now trying to start out younger and generate that interest, and then take other approaches, like through the use of social media, and try and work with building up that applicant pool. I mentioned earlier that we've seen an increase. I mean, to go back just a year or two, we were down as low as high 2,000s to 3,000 applicants in a year, which is record low for us. And we're now exceeding 5, approaching 6,000 applicants, and we see that number growing. So, you know, we have not changed our standards for hiring, don't plan to change our standards for hiring. We want the best and the brightest, and we're really just trying to increase that pool and get people who want to be state troopers.
Yeah, and that Camp Cadet program is just can't say enough good things about it. Real big back out west. Lots of good things about it. But I want to talk, what about the promotion testing for corporal and sergeant? I've heard concerns that some positions, particularly within the Bureau of Integrity and Professional Standards, are essentially hand-picked and not openly posted. And some individuals later move directly into sergeant promotions. Can you explain whether these positions are competitively posted or whether promotions strictly follow the eligibility list created by the Test and Oral Board?
Well, there's two different issues there. So selection into IAD or BIPS we can select individuals to be assigned in there. We can do that in a number of positions. There are, by contract, there are a few assignments. The Executive Protection Detail is another good example where we may or may not do a posting just to generate some idea of the interest, but ultimately we can select people for that assignment. Once they are in that assignment, it remains the Commissioner's discretion whether a promotion is offered. It's not just a promotion, though, that we randomly decide that that person gets promoted. They test like everyone else, and there is a promotion list that is generated based on written test and oral scores, and those people are ranked. When we get to that person on the list, we can, if we choose, offer them a promotion in place. And there are a number of specialty assignments across the department. It's not just BIPS that we do that. For example, if we have a helicopter pilot that's a trooper, and we've invested a lot of time and money into bringing them really up to speed, we may offer them promotion to the rank of corporal and keep them right where they're at. Computer crime would be another good example, and so forth. A lot of different areas where that occurs, and again, it's done only when they reach their time based on test scores.
All right, thank you for that clarification. I get two issues in my office all the time. Tow truck drivers on the side of the road at an accident. People will not slow down and move over. And also the drive right, pass left. Now, I'm not saying make an example out of me tomorrow whenever I'm going home, but what are some of the things that we can do that when people see that tow truck driver over there, slow down, move over, and also, you know, that left lane or that, you know, that left lane when traffic's backed up for 4 miles, just get out of it. And I'm not a fan of more citations, like I said, you know.
No, we've tried to work with PennDOT a lot on education. We've done a number of public service announcements. You know, we do engage in some enforcement with it as well. It's a dangerous situation, I agree, not only for the tow truck operators, for our people, for fire and EMS that are out there along the roads. You know, to your point, there are really only a couple of choices: enforcement and, you know, continuing education that we can try to get people, convince them of the need to move over and slow down.
Yeah, thank you for your answers today, and really thank you guys all for what you do. I appreciate you guys.
Thank the gentleman, Representative Kale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Colonel, for being here today. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that to give a shout out to your Beaver Barracks, which is about a mile and a half from where I live. You guys have an excellent group of troopers in that barracks, and I'd definitely get in trouble if I didn't give a special shout out to Mike Miller, who I believe is up for a promotion, and just a great group of people, and we really appreciate the work that they do there and the work that they do within the community. I wanted to ask a couple questions, maybe a little bit of a follow-up with what Representative DeVanzo was talking about, but specifically as it relates to recruitment. The last couple of years, we've been hearing a lot about how recruitment numbers are down. There's been efforts to increase recruitment, just broadly. How is recruitment coming? Where are we at with the recruitment process?
Well, as I indicated, I mean, we're finally seeing some progress and some improvement. And so those overall numbers are coming up. The diversity numbers within that pool of candidates are coming up as well. I'm happy with the progress that we've made. We have a long way to go. I still remember the days of getting 12 or 14,000 applicants in a testing process. I'd love to be back there again, and maybe we will one day. But I'm happy with the progress that we're seeing right now. I'd like to get those numbers a little higher, and always be in a position where we can hire well-qualified applicants to join our ranks.
How many applications are you seeing?
Currently for this year, we're between 5,000 and 6,000, which, again, I mentioned that we were at a low point just a few years ago of, high 2,000s to 3,000. So we've nearly doubled where we were just a couple of years ago, and, it seems to be trending up each year.
How many positions are we looking to fill from those?
Well, we're asking for budgeting of enough to fill 380 positions.
Okay. And we talked a little bit about the cap. I'm curious, if we had a magic wand and we could just get exactly where you think we need to be, how many troopers do you think would be best case scenario?
I've thrown out the figure of 300 to 400. I mean, I think that would put us in a good place. The thing that I want to make sure we clear up about any change in the complement cap, we can't just go hire troopers independent of whatever the legislature wants going forward. We have to be able to fund them. And so all the cap does is just gives us a little more flexibility in how we use those funds and the timing of the funds. So, for example, with the number of vacancies we have right now, we may have to wait until after the first of the year, which will be the next large retirement as we go into January of 27. Instead of being able to anticipate and use that funding if it's allocated for those 380 cadets, we would have to wait until January when the positions are already open, and then we would be able to hire, and it's going to take months and months to fill, train, and get those applicants out there, put them through a field training program, and in the end, you're looking at almost a year until we have a well-trained, fully qualified trooper. Lifting that cap allows us to work within the funding constraints that you all approve and anticipate those vacancies and work hard to put more troopers on the road out there where they're really needed in the communities.
And that cap doesn't include any civilian workers?
It does not.
So it's a whole different. Are there any positions that could be done by civilian that aren't currently being done by civilian?
Over the years, we've looked and we've tried to convert a number of them. Now, there are at times union concerns, but I think we've been able to work through the vast majority of those. And so we have civilianized pretty much everything that we can where it really doesn't require a fully trained law enforcement officer, an armed officer.
Well, thank you, Colonel. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for the professionalism that your organization shows and the work you do for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, sir.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to begin with my sincere thanks for your service and my deepest sympathies for your most recent loss. We appreciate you being here today. So I want to begin with a quote from a state trooper who said, "PA is a hot spot for human trafficking," which is very concerning to me. I know that the PA Coalition Against Rape and the PA District Attorneys Association formed a human trafficking response team here in Harrisburg. And I'm just interested to know if there have been any developments from that.
So we have worked with them. What we've also done is we have created a number of specialized investigative positions within our Bureau of Criminal Investigation tasked with looking at human trafficking. In the past year, we have initiated 64 human trafficking investigations just within PSP. We're working very closely with our federal partners with Homeland Security investigations. They've been very involved with it as well. There is a lot of room to continue to grow that capability, but I think we're on the right track. I will tell you, as I look at crime across the Commonwealth and the crime that our department investigates, there's been a significant decrease, and we're happy for that. But the one area of increase, and perhaps that is human trafficking, and perhaps that's because of the increased emphasis, maybe it's because of the increased prevalence, but I think we're seeing and detecting more of it as we build these partnerships and build out the specialized investigative capabilities within the agency.
Well, that's a huge concern. Obviously, with all the events coming up in Pennsylvania, the PA 250, the NFL draft.
I can assure you we will have our investigators working all of those events. That's part of the planning process for those, World Cup and others.
So you do have a specific strategy to prevent and prosecute these?
We do.
Good to know. Thank you. Another service you provide is in school safety and assessment, which was a priority of Act 44 in 2018. Your testimony highlights that you have 18 full-time troopers assigned to the Risk and Vulnerability Assessment Team, and you've conducted 376 assessments in 2025. Do the staffing levels and number of assessments meet the requirements that are outlined in the Act?
You know, I think they do. There are some challenges there, and we're looking for some efficiencies. We're working through some acquisition of software that I believe will increase the number of assessments that same group of assessors can do. But also, we're working with PCCD because one of the things that we found, an unintended consequence, perhaps, of some of the funding that's been put out there for school safety is that there is a belief by some school systems that there's a benefit to having an assessment. They may or may not adopt some of the recommendations, and they jump right back into the line, so it makes the backlog appear much larger, and there is a significant backlog there. We're working with PCCD to be able to clarify some of those rules so that perhaps we don't have schools that immediately jump right back into line to the exclusion of schools that have not yet had an assessment or a recent assessment.
Yeah, so I'm glad you bring that up because your report that 376 assessments were completed last year, of that, how many assessment requests did you receive? And is there still a backlog of requests?
There is, and it's, you probably have the number there, 600 roughly.
Oh, wow.
Backlog. But again, as we look at that backlog, there are a significant number of those schools that have had a recent assessment. And so, you know, again, I think that's where we need to do a better job of kind of parsing those districts out and making sure we're doing a good job of getting to those that have not had an assessment.
Well, I think, as I'm sure you agree, they're vitally important to keep our children safe in our schools. So again, thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Alsumer.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Colonel and team. Thank you for your service to the Commonwealth. My condolences for your loss. I want to give a shout out to Troop R up in my neck of the woods, specifically to our Honesdale Barracks in Wayne County and the Blooming Grove Barracks in Pike County, who do a great job in rural Wayne and Pike County in keeping my constituents safer, and they do a wonderful job reaching out to the local community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can you give an update on other infrastructure and facility upgrades or improvements, since there are no new general fund initiatives presented to harden or improve barrack security?
So we've done a number of things. An RVAT assessment is now a standard part of our design process as we move into a new facility. Where we have facilities that we expect to be in for some time, and I'll use Blooming Grove as an example, and as you're all too familiar with, I'm sure, back in 2014 we had the attack there. We have gone back and retrofitted those stations with a number of different security measures, whether to harden doors, windows, camera systems, and so forth, to better enable the station to be protected and to defend against a similar type of situation from occurring. The balance for us is we're also not trying to build fortresses. We want them to be welcoming to the public, and that the public has free access to come and go from the lobby and so forth. And so again, we try to strike that balance. But those enhancements are largely being done as we build new stations and again, being retrofitted as necessary. But we are looking at that at every station.
Are any such evaluations being undertaken, and are there any capital budget requests for new facilities or increased security fencing or technologies?
So the capital requests come in terms of the state-owned facilities. We also have a number of leased facilities. So we don't use the capital funds there. We go back and we do a lease amendment with the landlord, and then we're able to look at fencing, for example, or some of the other upgrades that I talked about. And so we have begun to put fencing around a number of stations, again, where it makes sense to do it. In terms of the capital process, where you will see those requests, primarily troop headquarters, their own facilities, and so as we build those, one of our next requests, I believe, is for the Hazleton troop headquarters, and so there will be security measures built into the capital process there.
Does PSB use its own risk and vulnerability assessment team to evaluate the safety and operation of its own facilities? And have you ever considered evaluations by an outside agency or private contractor?
We do use our own RVAT teams, and no, I've not considered an outside team. I consider our people to be very skilled and talented individuals. What I would tell you is that when they present their findings or recommendations, there's a menu there. And so we have to look at those, and that's where we strike that balance. And so I don't see a real benefit to going to an outside firm. I don't believe there is anything more comprehensive that they would supply us than what we can get from our own people. It's simply that, again, we're trying to strike that balance. We could put a 12-foot high fence with razor wire around the top and a sally port and, fully armored doors and windows and everything else, but we certainly wouldn't be able to invite the public in very easily. So we try to strike that balance. I think we're doing a good job of it. We can't prevent every threat and still have the stations accessible, but again, we're striking that balance.
Are you considering the closure or consolidation of any PSP barracks or offices because of the governor's previous space optimization and utilization improvements initiative as proposed under the Department of General Services?
We are not. PSP is not a work-from-home agency. Our people all report into the office. So for us, nothing has changed, and that space is still needed.
Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Reichert.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all. And again, I'd also like to echo the same comments about the troopers that unfortunately lost their lives. We recently celebrated 2 troopers back in my district who were shot but recovered. Troopers Pack and Amorose, and are finally back on full detail. So a good story there. But real quick before I get into my real question, Colonel, the states that have legalized marijuana, in your experience or what you've seen, is it still cheaper for individuals to purchase marijuana on the streets than it is through those state stores or through whatever apparatus they might have?
I have to tell you, that's really not one of the aspects that I've ever really explored with the colonels from the other states. My focus has been more on enforcement, highway safety issues, sure, and other types of criminal.
Okay, I wasn't sure if there was, drug buy data or things or price points along those lines that you're aware of. Changing gears slightly to back to procurement, some other things that have been talked about. Just curious, what's the current standard sidearm for state police troopers?
A Walther PDP 9mm.
Very nice. When was that switch? When was that switching? Because it used to be, was it the Glock like 45 cal?
That was quite a while ago. We had a Sig Sauer P227 for a number of years, and then switched now to the Walther. And that's been about, 18 months. Time flies, so I have to look back. Probably about 18 months or so.
Okay. What was the selection process, I guess? Because Walther is a very, very nice pistol.
So we had a group from that was chaired by our research and development team. but they worked hand in hand with representatives from the field, from training and education, from the Pennsylvania State Troopers Association. We got a lot of input, narrowed down, looked at a lot of different firearms, talked to other states or agencies that were carrying some of those firearms, tested those firearms extensively, and then once we had narrowed that down, included some field trials with the firearms where we brought people in and provided them some training on it and then put them through some shooting courses to see what their opinion was, and ultimately that was the firearm that was arrived at and meets our needs.
Right, so so it's been 18 months since it was selected. Are they being phased in as the older SIGs are taken out of service?
Yeah, and it's probably closer to 2 years as I think about it, and they're completely phased in. We did it in fairly short order through one qualification cycle, and so they're out there. There was a transition as well. We went to a red dot optic on the
Very
top
nice.
of it, and again, that was all part of the transition process.
Good. So, like I said, it was all internal testing, that sort of stuff. There weren't RFPs or things like that were placed out. It was just all internal testing and based off of your experiences and that sort of stuff. So, is that standard across procurement practices for state police?
It depends. It depends on the item that we're selecting. And something like the firearm, we do have the expertise in-house to be able to look at any number of different firearms. And, we considered a wide range of manufacturers. We had narrowed it down to the 9mm so that we could focus in on that. And then really it was about, again, a wide range of testing and opinions that led us. There are other cases where if we don't know what's out there or we need some other expertise, we certainly can follow various other procurement methods to go about that.
Well, very good. If you ever need a civilian tester, let me know. Happy to spend a little time at the range. So thank you, Colonel. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you.
Thank the gentleman, I guess. Chairman Struzzi.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of quick follow-up questions, maybe some clarification. So related to complement, I believe in your testimony you said that the best approach would be to simply remove the cap completely and then allow you to basically establish your own caps internally based on your appropriation.
Well, I suppose that's a way of saying it. But yes, it would be working in conjunction with the governor's office and with the legislature based on the level of funding allocated to then be able to set whatever those numbers are and the pace of that hiring. Okay. So that, again, if there's an allotment of funding that's made specifically to hire cadets, we can decide, can we use it sooner rather than later to anticipate vacancies that are upcoming.
You had said to Representative Kale when he asked about what would be your ideal number, you said about 400 more troopers, is that?
300 to 400, yes, sir.
Okay, so that would put you roughly about 5,200 or so?
In that ballpark.
Okay, all right, good. And then a clarification on the line of questioning from Rep. Mostello related to the PIC system and the money that was discovered during the audit. Now, in your budget request, and you said they kind of overlapped, or the budget request was put in before that money was found.
The budget request was put in well before that money was found.
So is that $4 million that was requested still necessary?
No, sir. We can use that money. If that money is appropriated, we will simply wait for next year and use the money then. But if you want to remove the $4 million, we can use that $15 million to backfill it and pay for some of the other funding, because it does cost. It costs more than that.
Right,
to run
right.
PICs.
Yeah.
Normally, we're supplementing out of the
GTO. What is the normal cost for that on an annual basis?
I have it here. I think it's around $13 to $14 million.
To run the PIC system. Okay. Yes, all right. Thank you for that. And then just one final question. I think we're interested in the training facility. I don't think we've mentioned that for a couple of years now. I know you had a really old, outdated facility, and you're in the process of building a new one. Can you give us a quick update on that?
Yes, sir. So that's coming along quite nicely. It's on time. We, a few months ago, moved into the new stables. That was the first part of the facility to come online. The Bureau of Emergency and Special Operations is nearly complete, and so in the next several months, we expect to move in there. The main academy building is really taking shape. If you get a chance to drive over through the Hershey area, it's now very prominently featured as you drive out Hershey Park Drive. It will be ready for occupancy, hopefully by late October, and we would be ready to move into that. Once we move into that, the existing academy will be torn down, an additional building will take place there. But we will maintain full operational status throughout and then increase capabilities as we replace the old facility with other structures there.
What's the old facility going to be utilized for?
I'm sorry?
The old facility be converted into what?
Well, it's going to be torn
Just
down.
torn down,
And building will take place over top of that space.
Oh, I see, to
So,
complete the entire project.
Yes, sir. There will be an indoor shooting range and an outdoor training village that will be built on that same site and connected to the new main academy.
And do you foresee that helping with recruitment?
I do think that's going to be a help. I mean, if anyone, we bring them in for tours and everything. I mean, it's in many ways constructed like an old Army barracks, a minimum 2 per room. Some of them are squad bays that can have as many as 6 people in a room, group bathrooms. It was built in the late 1950s and, in the style of an Army barracks. And so I really think that's going to assist us in recruiting and bringing people in. The new facility dorms will resemble something more like a college dorm room, individual rooms, and just a much more professional training facility. But not only, have the ability to house them in a much nicer place, the classrooms will present opportunities for realism, built-in courtroom in one of the classrooms, for example. And then they're all adjacent to an indoor training village so that we can very quickly take the cadets from something they've learned academically in the classroom down the hall and into a training village and put it to practice. So we're not waiting until we have a week of scenarios or something where we take them outside and we try to simulate things. Very realistic opportunities to train in, both in the academy and then on the grounds outside. I'll tell you, if you have the time, I'd invite you to
Absolutely.
come over for a tour. But
Yes.
It's an amazing facility.
The overall completion date is?
Well, again, the main academy by October, and then early 2028 for everything to be completed.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for everything you do to keep our Commonwealth and community safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, and I agree. Thank you all for being here. And I don't have any particular questions. I think our members covered everything. And so, again, we thank you for being here with us and providing answers. And thank you for the work that you do every single day to keep Pennsylvania and Pennsylvanians safe. We will be back here tomorrow for our last day of budget hearings. Y'all not gonna make no noise? All right, whatever. You know what? Let's come back next week. With more, never mind, okay. We'll be here tomorrow for our last day of budget hearings. At 10 a.m., we'll be joined by the Governor's Office of the Budget and the executive offices. And so I will see everyone here at 10 a.m. And with that, this budget hearing is adjourned.